Hi guys, we're going to be talking about the assessment requirements now for your Matwork certificate with us. So what I'd like you to do is grab your induction pack and find your Matwork assessment schedule. So we're just going to run through the assessment schedule and also chat about the individual documents inside that induction pack which relate back to your assessment schedule. So once you've got that handy, you'll notice that the first thing that is due is called Summary of Hours number 1. And the Summary of Hours is a really simple assessment. It's just a one-page document, which is a snapshot of where you're up to with your work experience hours. So it's a document that asks you to give a series of totals in relation to your observation hours, your co-instruction, your teaching, and your self-mastery. And it's just there for you and for us to make sure that you're keeping on track with your hours and that you're not going to need an extension down the track. So just to make sure that everything is tracking the way we want it to be. So when you're submitting that assessment, we just want that one page of totals. We don't need your log sheets attached, and you're just going to be popping an assessment submission form on top of that. So every single assessment is going to be submitted with that assessment submission cover sheet. We'll talk about that in a little while. All right, so that's the Summary of Hours. And then the next thing you'll see is your written assignment. So written assignment, you'll find that in your induction pack. And we recommend actually that you start on that pretty much straight away. So after you've had your first weekend contact, we will have covered off the first section of theory, and that's going to relate to certain questions in that written assignment. And the next time you have your next set of contact, we recommend you go back to the written assignment and complete a little bit more, and so on and so forth until you're able to finish the whole thing. So it's quite a large written assignment. You want to make sure that you don't leave it right until the end when it's due to complete it. Much better to just go about it really gradually so that you don't feel too overwhelmed with it. And also there are some programs inside that written assignment where you're required to teach them to somebody else. So if you leave it till the last second, you're going to find it pretty difficult to get that done. So the written assignment, get into it straight away and just gradually complete it, and then it's going to feel like a really good support for the information you're learning in your contact time as well, which is what it's designed for. And then the next thing you'll see due is your written exam. So your written exam is a 2-hour theory exam, and that's closed book. So you're going to be coming into the studio. You'll see that there is a time and a date already nominated for that. So really pop that date in your diary. It's very important. And you're going to need to study pretty much all of your repertoire, all of that foundations manual, and in relation to the anatomy and physiology information, there is a separate anatomy and physiology manual inside the foundations workbook. You're not going to need to study that in detail. There is some anatomy questions in the written exam, but those come from the information from the foundations workbook itself. So it doesn't come from that big anatomy and physiology self-directed learning workbook, just from the foundations workbook. And aside from that, everything else is pretty much testable. It also does test some questions from your work health and safety unit. So that workbook, that work health and safety workbook. But we recommend that you don't spend a huge amount of time studying that in detail because there are only a few questions and they're really very simple and in relation to the Pilates environment. So if you're looking for guidance on where to put your study time, do firmly keep it in the Pilates realm and just know that all of that other information is there as a backup for you too. So that's the written exam, the theory exam, and you'll see that you've also got due a final practical Matwork assessment, and that is actually done by video submission. And there's a few reasons why it's done by video submission. First of all, we are an RTO, so that's a registered training organisation, and that means that we are subject to government auditing from time to time. And part of that is keeping student assessments so that we can present it as evidence back to our auditors to show the quality of work that our students are putting out there, And also just to check that our assessments are really consistent with all of our faculty, etc., etc. So that's one first really important reason, because we do need to keep your assessment. And then the second reason is that we've found that students actually perform a lot better when the assessor isn't in the room with them when they're teaching. So it allows you to relax, give the best performance that you possibly can be, and also have a great tool by watching yourself teach before you submit. So it's really important that you actually watch your submission before you send it in to us, or hand it in to us, I should say, because if you're not happy with it, we would prefer that you filmed it again so that you're presenting your best work. And because of that, we really recommend that you make sure that you don't film your submission too close to your due date. We recommend that you do a practice run maybe a week or two before the due date, just in case there's any technical issues with your video camera. Maybe one of your clients drops out at the last minute and lets you down. So give yourself plenty of time so that you're getting your assessments in on time. That practical Matwork assessment, let's just have a look at that task sheet. You'll see that there are 2 video submissions. One of them is an intermediate level Matwork class, and the other is a small apparatus Matwork class. And the small apparatus Matwork class can be at a level of your choosing. For both of those video submissions, you do need to have a minimum of 4 people that you're teaching to. And that's really a hard and fast rule. Unfortunately, you're not able to accept any submissions with less than 4 people. So just make sure that you've got that planned before you are ready to film. And you're going to pop that video onto a USB stick for your submission. And we need to make sure that you give it to us in an MOV or MP3 format, just so that we don't have any technical issues with looking at them. In terms of how you set up the video, don't be too intimidated if that's not your area. It doesn't need to be fancy or large scale. As long as we can see you and your clients and we can hear you really clearly, that's really all that matters. So it can be a video camera, it can be off your laptop, whatever it takes to make a nice clear recording of you, your clients, and clearly audible as well. If it isn't, sometimes we might have to ask you to resubmit, so you want to make sure that you're really covering your requirements there. And then part of your final assessments as well is a few things that you're going to submit, not for marking, but just that we can check that you've completed them. So the first thing of that is the repertoire self-audit. And the repertoire self-audit is a list of all of the repertoire that you're learning in the course in a table format. And there's one column that shows where you tick, I am now comfortable doing this exercise in my own body. And then there's a second column that is, now I'm comfortable to teach this exercise. There's also a section of exercises where you don't feel comfortable, and that's going to help flag that we need to run through those again with you. Also, there is self-directed learning tasks that come in that same document with your repertoire self-audit, and that's just a series of questions, much like your written assignment, that we recommend that you work your way through during the course as a support to your learning, but we're not going to be marking that and handing it back to you. And then the other document that you'll need to hand in at the end is going to be your completed log sheets. So we've already covered how to complete your log sheets in the work experience video, so you can check back in on that if you need more detail. But the log sheets, you need to make sure that you've hit all of your minimums and you're going to submit those with all the signatures along with your practical submission and your repertoire self-audit. And also, finally, with your observation tutorials. So your observation tutorials, you'll find those in your induction pack as well. And that's just a sequence of worksheets that you can fill out as you're doing your observation hours. There isn't a tutorial for every single hour, so you're going to need to choose when you would like to fill them out. But they relate to helping to give you more of an idea of what you should be looking at. So It'll ask you to look at a particular person in the class doing a particular exercise and to make notes about what you might see, what their posture looks like, how they're moving. And so they're just a really good guide to help make sure that you're not just sitting back and seeing the class as a whole, that you're actually getting to pinpoint the details of what makes that class successful and then how you can apply that in your own teaching as well. So those are all of the actual assessments. Let's talk now about just some of the submission requirements. Earlier I touched on needing to have a cover sheet for every single assessment, and that is really crucial for helping us keep track of your assessments. And all we want to see is your assessment, cover sheet and a staple in the corner. We don't need any portfolios, plastic sheets, any fancy binding, because we have to keep all of the assessments. Storage is at a premium for us and that just ends up going to waste. So we'd really love it if you keep it simple and just give us neat and tidy paper with a staple in the corner. We've already talked about the practical being on a USB stick in an MOV or MP4 format. And just keep in mind we keep the USB, so you need to give us a copy of those practical assessments rather than the only copy. Yeah, you keep a copy and give us a copy as well. You need to hand in all of your assessments in person to our training headquarters to a staff member. So it can be to a PTI staff member or a PFI staff member, just so that we can really make sure that it goes through the right processes to get to our assessors. And so no email submission, no fax submissions possible, making sure that you leave yourself plenty of time to drop in your assessment in person before or on the due date, which is really important. If you do live regionally, we can certainly accept postal submissions. And also, if you do need to sit your exam with a justice of the peace in your hometown, that is something that we are able to arrange with you, but making sure that you identify that with us with plenty of time before the due date. The due dates on your assessment schedule, they are really important to make note of. If you need extensions, there is a application process for that, and you will look in your student handbook to see the process for applying for extensions or deferments. So I think that's everything, guys. On to the next video.